Today, one of our favorite guests is returning onto the program to talk about the Grand Canyon. It's Dr. Andrew Snelling, who's a geologist with Answers in Genesis, and he returns again to share with us evidence related to the flood described in the book of Genesis.
Yeah, well, the Grand Canyon is one of the natural wonders of the world. It can even be seen from the moon because of the scale of the gash in the ground. It's 277 miles long, 18 miles wide at its greatest width, and over a mile deep. And it is a spectacular sight. Those who see it for the first time, there's an audible gasp. Unlike, there's bigger canyons, wider canyons, deeper canyons, but this one is unique because the layers that are exposed to view, you can go from the bottom of the Grand Canyon, where you're looking at the crystalline basement rocks that are foundational to every continent, and then stacked on top of them are these pancake layers all the way up to the rim. So you've got the whole span and scope of Earth history exposed to view. But most people don't realise that when you look into the Grand Canyon, you're actually on top of a plateau. At the edge of that plateau, through which the canyon has been carved, the rock layers have been bent and dropped 3,000 feet out to the east. What is evident to everybody is that these bends are nice and smooth. Let's take man-made rock called concrete. Everybody knows that if you try to break concrete, it's going to snap. When are you able to make concrete pipes, for example? When it's a slurry, it's wet, and the cement hasn't dried and hardened to bind together the sand and the gravel. That's exactly what happens with sedimentary rocks. The water carries the particles down, spaces in between, there's water in between the grains, and that dries out, and the chemicals that are in the water cement the grains together. That's exactly what happens in man-made concrete. When it's soft and wet, it's pliable, you can bend it. It poses a significant research issue. The conventional view, it's supposed to have been deposited 508, 509 million years ago, give or take, they say. Hundreds of millions of years later, 450 million years between the laying of the sandstone, and in that time with 10,000 feet of other layers above, and so it should have fractured, it should have shattered, or there had to be elevated temperature and pressure that made the rock more pliable.
Okay. For
years, we've been looking at this. I looked in the literature to see what had been done. There were lots of claims about these bent rocks. They said, it had to be done under heat and pressure. The grains rolled past one another and layers moved, etc. And it was all smooth and gradual over millions of years. Because from a biblical perspective, that sandstone layer that I mentioned before would have been deposited early in the flood, and then the plateau was uplifted at the end of the flood, so the rocks would have still been wet and easily bent. So it should be sedimentation, bending, and then cementation. And so we launched in early August 2017, and so we collected the 53 rock samples. We had two small rafts. We went the full length of the canyon. We stopped at 4 folds in 3 different rock units. Some people think that COVID was a curse, and it was. But for me, it was a blessing. I had to work from home. So I set up my geological microscope in my basement, and I spent 2,500 to 3,000 hours looking at each sample. We've got a friend at a lab in Calgary, Alberta, who organised those microscope slides. He also did X-ray diffraction analysis, and then I did a meticulous review of each of the entire literature. I make sure I covered every detail, every reference, every study on these rock layers. I'm now written the first paper on the first fold. I can refer back to my work on the Tapete sandstone. And now I'm about to publish the paper on the first of these folds. And that paper also includes scanning electron microscope photographs.
You're looking for evidence that this stuff was bent by some kind of heat metamorphosis of some sort should take place.
Yeah, or if the grains had been crushed, the cement had been broken, those sorts of things we're looking for.
Okay, and
because if the rock had been bent before it was cemented, soon after it was deposited in the flood, the cement would be pristine, unbroken, and the grains would still show the features that they had when they were deposited.
That's excellent, excellent. All right, Dr. Snelling, thanks for all of that. Excellent first episode, and we'll be back with you for part 2.